So very good evening to all of you. Welcome to the revision session of chapter 17. And today we are going to start our discussion with the mechanism of breathing. Because in our last lecture, we already observed the parts of respiratory system and their structure. So question is, who are responsible for breathing? What are the parts of respiratory system involved in breathing? Khushi, Ayushi, Krishna, Manashri, Nidhi.
Ma'am, nostril, nasal passage.
Breathing mechanism, that inspiration and expiration, all major parts of respiratory systems are involved. But what extra things are responsible? To make lungs
Diaphragm.
contract and expand. Diaphragm and
Intercostal muscles.
so diaphragm is a muscular membrane which is dividing our body into thoracic region and abdominal region, located just in between the thorax and the abdomen, and it can contract and expand. When diaphragm is lowered, it is going down, then the lung is expanded. At that time intercostal muscles are like contracted or expanded. What do you think?
Expanded.
Are you sure?
Ma'am, during inspiration, they get expanded.
Muscles get expanded. That's what my question is.
No, ma'am, muscle gets contracted.
And the rib cage will expand. So don't make mistake. Muscles will get contracted. There is sternum, which is at the junction of sternum and the rib cage or the ribs. There is presence of intercostal muscle. So this contracts so that the rib cage can expand like this, which will increase the horizontal area of thoracic region, and then diaphragm, as it goes down, the longitudinal area of thoracic system will increase. Now, at the time when the total volume of the thoracic area is increased, at that condition, air will gush. Why air will gush? Because as the lungs is expanded, the air pressure present in the lungs is 2 to 6 millimeter mercury than the atmospheric pressure. And you know that air will always move from high pressure area to low pressure area. So as the lungs expand and the pressure drops, air will move. So what is the path of movement of air? What is the exact path? Who is going to tell this to me?
Ma'am, can I?
Yes, yes.
Nostril, nasal passage, pharynx, then primary, no, then
See,
trachea.
you forgot internal layers. External layers or nostril, you talked about it. What about the internal layers? This will go from nasal passage or chamber to internal layers, next to pharynx. Then after pharynx, it will go to?
Trachea.
No. It will go to glottis. Then through larynx, it will pass through trachea. And after trachea, it will be?
Primary bronchi.
Very good. Then?
Secondary, then terminal, then
Secondary are
tertiary,
called
and
bronchi, or they have some other name?
then bronchioles. Then terminal or tertiary bronchioles, and then alveoli.
Very good. So you must note down the names which is missed by you, so that you don't forget it. Now tell me, which mode of breathing is more preferable, via nose or via mouth?
Nose.
Why?
Because it has hair and mucus which can help to trap the germs, microbes, or dust.
Very good. So we have to remember, during expiration, inspiration is caused by contraction of diaphragm as well as the intercostal muscle. But during inspiration, the volume of thoracic region or thoracic cage, or rather to say thoracic area, is increased. In expiration, during expiration, it is exactly opposite. The intercostal muscle and the diaphragm will be relaxed, and this will decrease the volume, thoracic volume, and which will create a pressure on lungs, due to which lungs will throw out the air present inside outside. So, can you tell me some extra muscles which are helpful for forceful expiration?
Intercostal muscles.
Intercostal muscle is the main muscle. Apart from that, if we are forcefully inspiring or especially expiring, the abdominal muscles also plays role. You try yourself, you will see that your abdomen will go down or go inside. Baba Ramdev at least like popularized this concept, no? Have you seen him doing Kapalbhati? Guys?
Yes, ma'am.
So you will never forget that abdominal muscles also play major role in this. Okay. So now we just want to talk about rate of respiration, that is physical respiration. Each respiratory cycle is made up of one inhale, and that is one inspiration, and one expiration. So can anyone tell me the respiratory cycle, what it is per minute?
12 to 16 times per minute.
It is actually 14 to 18 times per minute for a normal human being. Okay, so there is a rhythm, and due to which this rhythm is maintained. But if we are excited, if we are running or anything, or even if in case we are not well, in such conditions also this respiratory rate increase. Okay, so the kind of respiration we have in our body is called negative pressure breathing. So what is this negative pressure breathing? In our case, we inhale air because lungs at that time will have lower air pressure than the atmospheric pressure. So pressure in lungs is negative as compared with the atmospheric pressure. So what is the advantage of this negative air pressure breathing? The advantage is it that air can come inside by its own. We don't have to suck it. Karke, we don't have to suck it. Even if my mouth is open, air definitely will go inside. Obviously, it may not be with that speed, but it will go. So what is the advantage of this negative pressure breathing? What would have been happened अगर हमें ऐसे forcefully लेना पड़ता air?
मैम अगर वॉलंटरी होता तो फिर अगर कोई बार भूल जाते तो फिर
भूल जाते तो प्रॉब्लम होता है. And same second thing is that even if it can be controlled by autonomous nervous system, the time when we are eating we cannot do it. So this negative pressure breathing is very helpful in giving us opportunity to breathe as well as to eat the food simultaneously. Okay. So now I just wish to ask you, do you people, yes beta?
मैम नेगेटिव एयर प्रेशर का आपने ये कहा ना कि हमारे लंग्स में कम प्रेशर होगा और बाहर ज्यादा होगा.
When lungs expand at that time.
हाँ.
That's why by natural means air will gush inside. We don't have to do anything else.
Okay.
Okay. So I taught you people the concept of all volumes, that is tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume, with like much detail. Nothing much to talk about there here, which is extra. So do you have any doubt in that part? If not, then we can skip.
No doubt, ma'am.
No doubt.
Sure, all of you, if you wish, you can check your textbook or the PPTs I shared with you, so that if not, then we will move ahead. So I just want to highlight here, sometimes when we inspire and expire, I talked to you last time about also the dead space. What do we mean by this dead space?
Ma'am, everything except alveolar sac are known as dead space.
That is true, because that is the area where means gaseous exchanges takes place. That is the main place. So now we will talk about the next concept, that is exchange of gases. Okay, so I just wish to talk about this part is also not much complicated, very simple. Only the values you have to remember. That very simple thing is based on the concept of partial pressure. You must have studied this in chemistry, that if any kind of gas is there, as that gas is fluid, it will provide some kind of pressure in the surrounding condition. So if I close 1 liter of hydrogen gas inside a bottle, it will create some pressure on the wall of bottle. So that is called pressure of gas. Now, more the gaseous particle, more will be the pressure. There is a complete relationship between molar concentration and pressure, that they are directly proportional. Less is the volume, there will be more pressure. Now, we will not go for so many different things, because I don't want to teach you states of matter. But we have to understand that number of particles is related with the pressure. Why? Because more number of particles or more kinetic energy present in the particles, more will be the pressure applied by the particles. Okay. So in such context, if I mix two types of gases, there will be pressure exerted by individual. So obviously, this pressure is called partial pressure. One thing we have to understand, that the air we inhale or the one we are exhaling is not pure air. हम ऐसा बोलते हैं at the time of explanation that we are taking oxygen, but are we taking only oxygen? What do you mean?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Are we taking only carbon dioxide? No. Then how we are talking about? So we have to understand one thing, the air we are inhaling is not purely oxygen, first of all. Exhaling is not purely carbon dioxide. And the second thing is, if I am talking about a blood which is oxygenated blood, that doesn't mean that there will be no trace of carbon dioxide. And similarly, if I am talking about the blood which is deoxygenated, doesn't mean that there will be no oxygen. We are talking always here in terms of greater percentage. It has greater percentage of oxygen as compared with carbon dioxide. That's why we are calling it oxygenated blood. Now what happens is, when I inhale air inside my lungs, I will be having carbon dioxide present in it, oxygen present in it, and other components also. But the blood which is coming to my alveoli, okay, you know that I told you that alveoli wall is quite thin, and alveoli wall and the wall of blood vessel, that is blood capillary, is acting as a membrane, and across that membrane the diffusion occurs. So I wish to share a screen. Just give me a single. So we were talking gaseous exchange. I just wish to say that gaseous exchange occur in between alveoli and blood tissues. I told you that blood tissue is also having partial pressure of gases present in the blood, and alveoli is also having blood pressure. And the tissues where actually the metabolism is taking place will have its partial pressure. So three things are involved in this whole process. One is alveoli, second one is blood vessels, and the third one is tissue. So gaseous exchange occur, two gaseous exchange occur. One is between the alveoli and blood vessel, and the second is between the blood vessel and tissue. And again, same. Okay. So method is by simple diffusion, and it is depending on these four factors. One is pressure gradient, as I told you. Second is solubility of gases. Have you ever wondered that carbon dioxide percentage is very small, but then also we are so much afraid about carbon dioxide? Why? Because it is having very high solubility. Although the ability to form carboaminohemoglobin is very less, then also most of the carbon dioxide can be transported in the solubilized form, in the form of bicarbonate or in the form of carbonic acid. Okay, so thickness of the membrane is obviously a factor. If the membrane is thick, then diffusion will be slow or fast. What do you think?
Slow.
Slow. And surface area of respiratory membrane. So we know that the membrane is very thin and surface area is already increased by the alveoli. So this is the different values of partial pressure. So it will be very, very evident that the movement will be easily from high to low. So if you see the partial pressure of different gases present like in different portion, you can see that in atmosphere the partial pressure of oxygen is more than alveoli at expanded condition. So it will definitely move from here to here. Okay. And then in deoxygenated blood is it's further lower, so it will go there. Okay. Now, once the blood is receiving oxygen, it will have this value. If you compare with tissue, it is still better, so it will go there. And if we are talking about the difference between tissues and oxygenated blood, the transportation will be or exchange will be in this way. In all cases, you can see the partial pressure is lower and the movement of gases will be always from higher partial pressure to lower partial pressure. Is there any doubt in this regard?
No, ma'am.
So I just, yes, Rutu.
मैम हम जब इसका क्वेश्चन आंसर्स लिखेंगे तो भी ये टेबल फॉर्म करके मतलब पूरा सेंटेंस वाइज लिखना है?
You can talk about this table definitely, but you have to explain, because when I draw this table, along with it I was speaking, so they will also expect you to speak. Better you can draw this diagram. It is present in your NCERT also.
Okay.
Okay, so I just want to ask you one question, that there are fishes. Fishes are having mixed blood and they can manage their circulation, and they have comparatively low rate of circulation also, because their respiration low rate is also dependent. But breathing is very faster in them because they have to take dissolved oxygen. And they have gill which is properly formed to adapt in the condition which is aquatic condition. But I guess all of you know there are mammals also which are called diving mammals. They dive in the water, stay for some time and come out once again. how they manage without like taking oxygen for such a long time. Can you guess any name of diving animal?
Dolphin.
Human.
Any mammal I am talking. Whale. You know that whale is a mammal? Have
Yes.
you heard that whale is a mammal?
Yes.
So how they manage this? First of all, their body is having lot many oxygen storage protein like myoglobin. Second thing is that the body weight, like as per body weight, they can store like things, but they need more blood because during that time they will be requiring oxygen. So they have a very large spleen present in their body. Whenever required, whenever they are going to drive in, before that their blood volume also increase because blood is released by spleen, so that the maximum amount of oxygen can be present in the blood and it can be distributed ever. Apart from that, during their diving in, when they are underwater, their metabolism and everything slows down so that without spending much oxygen, they can be there in long run. Okay, so that is how they manage everything in the diving condition. Okay, so in I guess there is no doubt in this regard. Any doubt?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
This part also we can consider done and we can move ahead. So you can see that the factors I already mentioned. So I'm just keeping this. And now we will talk about the transport of gases, which is the most important part of this chapter because maximum time students are having difficulty in understanding this. So basic transport methodology is taught to you. First is O2 transport by physical solution that is present in the blood plasma, which is very less in amount. And mainly O2 is transported by formation of oxyhemoglobin. Okay, so hemoglobin is basically a wonderful pigment, and as soon as it is exposed with high PO2, that is partial pressure of oxygen, uh, actually it can bind with the oxygen. But the beauty is, if it is encountering low PO2, as quickly as it bind with oxygen, it release oxygen also. So that's why hemoglobin is known as the very beautiful transport protein for oxygen. Because if the binding of oxygen with hemoglobin can be too strong, then we will have problem. फिर क्या problem होगा? If the binding is too strong,
मैम फिर वो टिश्यू तक पहुंचेगा ही नहीं.
नहीं पहुंचेगा तो जरूर. It
बट
will be
रिलीज
there.
नहीं होगा.
हाँ. So that's what the problem is, and hemoglobin manages it very nicely. That's why you can see 97% of hemoglobin is transported by as oxyhemoglobin, and only 3% is transported as getting dissolved in the plasma. This is the structure of hemoglobin protein. I taught you about the structure of hemoglobin protein in detail in biomolecules chapter, so I'm not waiting here for this one. And this is the way it is. Yes beta,
मैम हीमोग्लोबिन का स्ट्रक्चर क्वाटरनरी होगा.
quaternary हो गया. 2 alpha chain and 2 beta chain. Alpha chains are of 151 amino acid long and 2 beta chains 156 amino acid long.
Okay.
And at the center they have the heme unit. Heme unit, you can see here the structure of heme unit. which is having iron at the center. So basically, this is also a redox reaction, isn't it? Binding of hemoglobin with oxygen, isn't it a redox reaction? Now, I just wish to ask you a question. Here we are writing Hb4 plus 4O2. So, what do you think? 4 Hb molecules or what? I just want to ask.
Only one
Hb4
molecule.
means, is it mentioning about 4 Hb molecule, or is it is 1 Hb molecule?
1 Hb molecule.
So 1 Hb molecule, then why it is written Hb4?
Ma'am, it has 4
Ma'am,
units.
So it can bind with 4 oxygen molecule. That is valency which is mentioned over here. Okay. So this is the condition, and I just wish to talk about the oxygen dissociation curve. So this is the oxygen dissociation curve. So in x-axis you have partial pressure of oxygen. So, and in y-axis you have percentage of saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen. You have to understand this oxygen dissociation curve, and you have to understand the how it is very important. So it is a sigmoid shaped curve, which is very common in biological system. Sigmoid curve means it's a S-shaped curve. So what do we think? Do you think it is indicating if the curve is sigmoid? Can anyone explain this graph?
Ma'am, the saturation of oxygen when it is high, then the partial pressure of oxygen also increases.
Don't you think you are talking in reverse way? See, it shows that you should see whenever you want to explain any of the graphs, beta, you have to first understand and talk about x and y axis. In x-axis, it is saying partial pressure of oxygen, and in y-axis, it is saying percentage of saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen. So what do we mean by percentage of saturation of hemoglobin? What is the meaning of this? What do we understand by this word percentage of saturation?
Ma'am, at what percent and how much hemoglobin gets saturated with oxygen?
Very good. So what do we mean by this word saturation?
The amount of oxygen.
I
Combined
just
with
want to know the
hemoglobin.
word saturation. You must have studied about saturated solution, unsaturated solution, isn't it? Sometimes I said, oh, I studied so much, I am saturated. So what it is?
मैम saturation मतलब उससे
Limit.
ज्यादा उस ऐड नहीं हो सकता.
Very good.
Limit
So
आ जाना.
you yourself answered the question. That means if we increase the partial pressure, the percentage of saturation is also increased. Can you see here, as we are, when partial pressure is 0, percentage of saturation is 0. As the partial pressure is increasing, the percentage of saturation is also increasing. But after a level, it will come as a straight line. Why? Why it is coming
मैम
as a
क्योंकि
straight line?
saturation point आ गया.
हाँ, तो what do you mean by this? Saturation point आ गया मतलब अब क्या हो गया?
हीमोग्लोबिन हम उससे ज्यादा ऑक्सीजन बाइंड नहीं कर सकता.
Because it has valency of 4 and all hemoglobins are now utilized. No free hemoglobin is there. Understood? So this is what is oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. But a very confusing question you may ask that, ma'am, we are talking about dissociation and you are talking about association. So this curve can be studied this way also. Then it will be a dissociation curve. Okay. So I just want to talk about the factors which are affecting this oxygen dissociation curve. Before we go to CO2 transport, last time also I talked to you, but I want to write them once again. First factor is H+ ion concentration. It is inversely proportional to the oxygen transport. That means like the oxygen transport is badly affected if the pH is acidic. So if the pH is acidic, then the oxygen transport will be affected. And why the oxygen transport will be affected? Because it will be directly proportional to dissociation, and this will shift the curve to right. If the dissociation is more, that means even if after increasing the partial oxygen level, the hemoglobin will not bind, so the curve will be like this. Understood? So that means what? The main curve which was supposed to be will be shifting to the right hand side, isn't it? Guys, clear?
Yes, ma'am.
The next factor that is very important is the CO2 tension. So it will be also inversely proportional to O2 transport, and it also promotes the dissociation, and it also will shift the curve to right. Why? Because whenever there is increase in the value of CO2, sometimes some of them will be converted into what? They will be converted into carbonic acid, which will lower down the pH, and that's why it can help in dissociation of oxygen. Similarly, if I'm talking about temperature, if I'm increasing temperature, then in that case also oxygen transport will be decreasing and the dissociation will be there and the graph will be shifted to right. Why? Can anyone suggest why?
Ma'am, because hemoglobin is protein, so with increase in temperature, there will be denaturation.
Very good, very good. So these are the factors. Apart from that, erythrocyte concentration. You know, many a time it is observed that if a person is hemophilic, we always say that the hemoglobin is less. But many times, if our blood should have an ideal concentration of erythrocyte for proper functioning of the body and proper oxygen transport. If count is less than that, then obviously the amount of hemoglobin present in the blood will be low. In that case also it will be affected. Okay, so that means any of these factors which we talked about, if they are increasing and they will shift the curve in the right hand side, the affinity of oxygen with the hemoglobin will decrease and the hemoglobin will be releasing the oxygen. Is it clear to everyone?
Yes.
So I wish to talk about a few extra things over here. One is known as Bohr effect. So what do we mean by this Bohr effect? So Bohr effect means carbon dioxide, is it's known to all of us that carbon dioxide reacts with water to form carbonic acid. And carbonic acid is, after all, what? It's an acid. So it will lower down the pH of the active tissue. And what is the relationship of oxyhemoglobin dissociation with this pH beta? We know that if pH is decreasing,
Inverse.
yes. So that means if more CO2 is dissolved in water, like blood, in the form of carbonic acid, it will decrease the oxygen transport, and it will increase the oxygen dissociation. This is a very critical role player in case of oxygen transport, and that's why we have to think about it. And this effect is known as Bohr effect. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So now we will quickly look into the transport of CO2. So CO2 is transported by three means, that either by carbonic acid or by carboaminohemoglobin or as bicarbonate. And you can see, thank God, that only 7% of the CO2 is dissolved in plasma water to form carbonic acid. If it would have been more, then we will be of nowhere. So when actually the carbon dioxide present in tissue comes to blood, it will come first through plasma. In plasma, it is getting dissolved by 7%, and then from plasma, it will enter into RBC, and after it, the one which is present in plasma is 7%, rest 93% will enter into RBC, and it will be either forming 23% will be forming with the carboaminohemoglobin, and 70% will be converted to form carbonic, or rather to say bicarbonate ion. So what is the difference between carbonic acid and bicarbonate ion? Carbonic acid is an organic form and bicarbonate is an inorganic form. So this is the formula of carboaminohemoglobin, and this is how it works. Now there is an enzyme which is called carbonic anhydrase. It is mainly present inside RBC, but it is present in plasma also, but very low quantity. That's why maximum conversion of bicarbonate ion is there. So what it is doing basically, CO2 after getting dissolved in water will form carbonic anhydrase. Will form H2CO3, which is carbonic acid, and it is done under supervision of carbonic anhydrase. Same enzyme will helpful for conversion of this carbonic acid into bicarbonate ion and release H plus ion. Okay, so maximum percentage of carbon dioxide transported in our blood in the form of what?
Bicarbonate.
So you must be horrified by looking into this situation, that okay, how much? But we have to understand that as binding with the hemoglobin is low, if I take 100 ml of deoxygenated blood, out of that only 4 ml carbon dioxide will be delivered into lungs. Okay, not much. So I just wish to talk about a few extra things over here. And those extra things, out of those extra things, one is chloride shift. So what do we mean by this chloride shift? Anyone have any idea?
No.
No. So we know that the plasma and RBC are responsible for transport. Now, whenever the bicarbonate ion, they are present inside the RBC, they are formed. And in plasma, the CO2 is mostly present in the form of acid. So as soon as the bicarbonate ions exit, this will considerably change the ionic balance between the plasma and the RBC. So obviously consider a situation if it is present as H2CO3 and it is present as HCO3 minus. So inside RBC it is present like this and this is present in plasma. But for what purpose we are doing it? हम इस ब्लड में कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड ले रहे हैं जो, फॉर व्हाट पर्पस वी आर डूइंग इट? व्हाई वी आर टेकिंग आउट कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड फ्रॉम टिश्यू? गाइस, व्हाई डू वी नीड
मैम
टू टेक आउट? हाँ बोलो
मैम, क्योंकि हमें कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड एज अ वेस्ट बाहर निकालना है और ऑक्सीजन भरना है.
So that is something very, very interesting, that obviously we have to by some means remove this H2CO3 outside. But as this HCO3 minus comes out, suddenly there is a drop in negative ion concentration inside RBC, which cause a disbalance. To manage this, what is done? Chloride ion will diffuse as the HCO3 minus will come out, because it has to go out of the RBC. From plasma it has to go out and it has to go to lungs while so that it can be thrown out. The disbalance is managed by entry of chlorine ion into the plasma. Understood? And this is known as, the movement of chloride ion is known as chloride shift, or it is also known as Hamburger's phenomenon. I never forget this because it's having a very what I can say, tasty name associated with it. Hamburger. Have you taken hamburger? Original hamburger तो उसमें से किसी ने नहीं लिया होगा, because ham is something else. But all of you must have seen this. It's having structure like this. In between they put sausages and lots of sauce and everything, and it's hamburger. But don't worry, this says hamburger on the name of person who discovered it. Understood? Yes or no? Yes, beta.
मैम तो मैम जैसे अबंडेंट इंट्रासेल्युलर एलिमेंट तो K+ है और एक्स्ट्रा सेल्युलर Na+ है. मैम ऐसे सिर्फ क्लोराइड ही क्यों है, कोई दूसरा नहीं आ सकता था एलिमेंट?
दूसरा एलिमेंट क्लोराइड, see in our body, if I am talking about negative ions present in our body, the chloride is the only halogen that can be efficiently do it. Fluorine will be too risky, bromine and iodine will be too inefficient, and phosphate will be too big to diffuse quickly. So that's why chlorine is opted over here.
Ma'am, fluorine will be dangerous.
It is too oxidizing, no? It can oxidize even oxygen, beta.
और हाँ मैम, एक और डाउट आया कि जैसे कि हम CO2 और H2O को कार्बोनिक एनहाइड्रेट से अल्टीमेटली बाइकार्बोनेट प्लस H+ आयन में कन्वर्ट करते हैं, मैम बीच में H2CO3 में करने की जरूरत ही क्या है? हम डायरेक्टली नहीं कर सकते?
because उसमें हम करते नहीं है. The moment CO2 is coming in contact with water, it will form carbonic acid. करते नहीं है वो. What you, एक minute, why it is said, you know, many a times it is said that cold drinks and other things you should not keep for a long time. Many a times you can see the videos that it can be used as very efficient cleaner. Have you seen such videos?
Yes. Yes.
Because if you are dissolving CO2 in water, that will form carbon dioxide. इसमें कोई, like, there is no other means. Sorry, it will form the carbonic acid.
Okay.
So I just want to comment something. You know, hemoglobin act itself as a buffer. So what do we mean by buffer?
And which help to maintain pH.
Very good. So it will maintain the pH. How it maintains the pH? Consider if I have pH which is too acidic and I want to neutralize it, the HbO2 minus, it will bind with H plus ion to form the HB plus O2. You know that if there is increase in pH, oxygen get dissociated. Similarly, if the blood is if the blood is becoming too basic, okay, so at that time this HB, if the condition is basic, at that time this HB will dissociate to form H plus plus HB. So this way it can maintain the condition.
Okay.
So we saw so many factors which will be helpful for dissociation of O2 from the hemoglobin, isn't it? We talked about pH, temperature, carbon dioxide. So what is responsible for dissociation of CO2 from hemoglobin? What do you think?
Increase in partial pressure of oxygen.
Oxygen, very good. Because
Lesser H
yes,
plus, lesser
yes,
temperature.
yes. Not
And high
temperature
pH.
doesn't have effect as such, but yes, temperature, if there is increase in temperature, the solubility of all gases are decreasing. That you must be knowing. But I just want to talk about Haldane effect. So what is this Haldane effect? So this is the third effect we are learning. What are the other two effects we learned today? First one is Bohr effect. So what was this Bohr effect? I just want to have a quick revision because I know that you may get confused. Bohr effect is related to oxygen dissociation. That means whenever more amount of carbon dioxide is forming carbonic acid, it will decrease the pH, and that is why it will promote dissociation of oxygen. This is called Bohr effect. Then we talked about the next effect. What was the next effect we studied?
Chloride shift.
Phenomenon. We should not call it effect. We should call it phenomenon. So it's called chloride shift or Hamburger phenomenon. What it is? What is Hamburger?
Ma'am, to balance the minus charge in the cell.
In the which cell?
In tissues.
No. Not in tissues. Which cell? Inside RBC, beta.
RBC.
So what happens to maintain the ionic balance? What we do?
Chlorine moves inside the cell.
Why we have to maintain? Because HCO3 minus leaves. To maintain that, we have to do it. The third effect we are studying, that is Haldane effect. This is talking about, yes beta.
तो मैम जैसे नेगेटिव आयन को बैलेंस करने के लिए अगर क्लोराइड शिफ्ट होता है तो पॉजिटिव आयन को बैलेंस कौन करेगा?
यहाँ कौन सा पॉजिटिव आयन में एंगेज्ड है?
मैम नहीं है, बट जब HCO3 एंटर करेगा या लीव करेगा तो उसकी वजह से भी पॉजिटिविटी तो डिक्रीज होंगी ही ना।
कौन सी HCO3? HCO3 नहीं होता है. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड इट इज HCO3 माइनस. तो खुद नेगेटिव आयन ही हुआ ना बेटा. Which positive ion is other than H
हाँ, तो
plus
मैम
is
जब वो
mentioned?
सेल में जब वो नहीं होगा प्रेजेंट तब तो सेल मतलब उसके कंपेयर में तो पॉजिटिव ही होगा ना।
तो
Ma'am, she
उसके
is
कंपैरिजन में पॉजिटिव ना हो तभी तो जैसे HCO3 बाहर जाता है तब हम क्लोरीन को अंदर लेते हैं. दैट इज व्हाट द फंडा ना बेटा. When HCO3 minus is leaving RBC because it has to go out of our body, the CO2 has to go out of our body. When it is leaving RBC, at that time only to balance it, we are taking chlorine ion inside, no? Yes, Rutu, you wanted to say something better.
मैम वो ऐसा पूछ रही है मैम कि जब बाइकार्बोनेट आयन हमारे बॉडी के अंदर आता है तब माइनस चार्ज हो जाता है और जब वो लीव करता है कुछ टाइम के लिए तो पॉजिटिव चार्ज अबंडेंट रहेगा ना सेल में और फिर जब वापस क्लोराइड आयन आ जाएगा तब नेगेटिव चार्ज आ जाएगा.
वेरी वेग टर्म दैट इज सेल. You
Sorry,
are
RBC.
using a very vague term which is cell. तुम वापस से समझ नहीं रहे हो. You have to understand HCO3 minus present inside RBC is creating a negative environment inside RBC. First you tell me, is this part understand कि उसके अंदर एक negativity रहती है where inside RBC. Is this part clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now RBC doesn't want it to get destroyed. तो इस तरीके से तो it will never ever leave HCO3 minus, which is not possible. So the moment HCO3 minus goes out, it has to maintain that negative nature. To maintain that negative nature, it cannot hold that HCO3 minus for life. No, there should be a temporary way by which it can maintain the thing. जब तक नया HCO3 minus नहीं आ रहा है, it has to maintain it by some means. So that is maintained by movement of chloride ion from plasma to the RBC. Understood? So it's a kind of normal movement in which the moment HCO3 is going out, minus is going out, Cl will come in. So now you are talking about which positive? What? RBC, inside RBC, it should never be positive. It should be negative. That's why they are doing it.
हाँ मैम समझ आएगी.
So can we talk about the Haldane effect now?
Yes.
So Haldane effect is very simple. As I told you, people only suggested, and I also confirmed that the binding ability of oxygen with the hemoglobin is more as compared with carbon dioxide. So the moment partial pressure of oxygen is more, it will displace the CO2 from the hemoglobin. And this effect or this phenomenon is what I can say, Haldane effect. But have you ever wondered that why hemoglobin is having such partial attitude towards carbon dioxide? You have to understand that the moment oxygen is binding with hemoglobin, binding of oxygen with hemoglobin will displace the carbon dioxide and the blood will be more acidic. And it is playing a very important role in promoting the carbon dioxide transport, so that the Bohr effect is promoting the oxygen transport. So these two are antagonistic. Bohr effect is ensuring what? Oxygen is getting dissociated. Understood? And Haldane effect is ensuring that CO2 should be dissociated. So they are two antagonistic effects which are like working together to ensure the transport of CO2 and O2. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to talk here about a special type of hemoglobin that is called fetal hemoglobin. So what is fetus? Ever heard about this?
No.
So fetus is the developmental stage of embryo. See, we know that from zygote embryo is created, and from embryo we get the complete child during the stages of development of human child. So till from the moment you can identify the organism as human child inside mother's womb, we stopped calling it embryo. That stage is called as fetus. Foetus. So that's why the hemoglobin is called foetal, that is fetal ultimately hemoglobin. So have you ever wondered how this fetus is taking oxygen from mother? Because you must be knowing that fetus is an aquatic organism. Its lungs are not working. You must have seen in movies that whenever a child is born, wo rota hai. Have you ever wondered why it is crying?
Ma'am, to intake of
What?
ma'am to get oxygen.
So it is required. Otherwise, they like hold them with their legs and beat them like this so that they can grasp and take oxygen. Okay. So that is very much required. And but the thing is that means when it is present inside mother, the lungs actually is not working because there is no air from which it can take oxygen, and lung is made for taking oxygen from air, not from water, isn't it? So fetal hemoglobin is there, and it has to take oxygen from mother. So both are hemoglobin. Then why one hemoglobin will leave oxygen? Understand a condition I just want to talk about. Hemoglobin is leaving oxygen at a specific condition, and that condition is same for mother as well as child, isn't it? Because they are connected. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So there should be a condition in which mother's hemoglobin is leaving oxygen, but the child hemoglobin is not. It can still have some chances to bind with oxygen. Only at this condition, child can get oxygen from mother, isn't it? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's why fetal hemoglobin is having more and more affinity towards the oxygen as compared with the mother. That's why for binding of oxygen with the hemoglobin, you need to have a minimum amount of oxygen. In our case, fetal hemoglobin can take oxygen even if it is lesser than the concentration which is required for normal hemoglobin to take oxygen. That's why even if in mother's blood, mother has to suffice for its oxygen level, fetus can survive and fetal hemoglobin can take oxygen which is minimum, which can be enough after serving mother's purpose, and it can be supplied to the child. Understood, beta?
मैम
Yes.
तो मैम हम कह सकते हैं कि जो फीटल हीमोग्लोबिन है उसमें ऐसा कोई इलेक्ट्रोनेगेटिव कंपाउंड होगा जो मदर की हीमोग्लोबिन में नहीं होगा.
Electronegative. Why such a big word? I don't get.
मैम मतलब ऑक्सीजन
Electronegative compound. What do we mean by electronegative? First, you tell me that.
मैम which have ability to attract the lone pairs.
Lone pairs. Here, who are the lone pairs? Do you know the correct definition of electronegative compound? I am afraid, beta, you don't know the definition of electronegative compound.
Ma'am, the ability of an element to attract the shared pair of electrons.
Not lone pair, it is shared pair of electrons. And it's just attract, not take. Understood? You read the chapter number 3, periodic classification of elements, grade 11 chemistry. There it is clearly mentioned that in a covalent compound, if the electron should be placed exactly in between two atoms of two elements. If there is unequal electronegativity, for example, can you give me example of any polar element, polar compound? HCl for say. So in that case, chlorine is more electronegative, so it will drag the electron cloud towards itself. So how electronegativity is fitting here, beta? You can ask me questions, any such kind of questions. Trust me, no question is stupid question. I believe in my life and I believe in asking question wherever I work. Till date, if I don't understand anything, I ask question. Why? क्योंकि क्वेश्चन पूछने से शायद उस वक्त के लिए मैं आई कैन बी like people can think that she doesn't know, she is stupid, but if I'm thinking about future beta, for next time I don't have to commit any mistake because that concept will be clear for all. So Ayushi, can you suggest?
मैम तो ही वो ऑक्सीजन को अपनी तरफ अट्रैक्ट करेगा ना, वरना तो कैसे करेगा?
बेटा तुम
सारे
गड़बड़ कर रहे हो, तुम गड़बड़ कर रहे हो। इलेक्ट्रोनेगेटिव कंपाउंड एलिमेंट जो होते हैं वो ऑलरेडी जिसके साथ कोवेलेंट बॉन्ड में बाउंड है उसके शेयर्ड पेयर ऑफ इलेक्ट्रॉन को अट्रैक्ट करता है। ऑक्सीजन एक एटम है, हाउ कैन इट अट्रैक्ट ऑक्सीजन? यू डोंट अंडरस्टैंड
कंडीशन।
कौन सा कंडीशन?
तो मैम फिर क्या कंडीशन होगा कि मदर का हीमोग्लोबिन ऑक्सीजन रिलीज करेगा और फीटस का रिसीव करेगा?
It is depending on the slight modification of structure due to which it is having more affinity towards the attraction. Have you ever heard that many a time after the birth the child is having jaundice?
Yes ma'am.
So that is due to destruction of this fetal hemoglobin. Yes Rutu, you want to ask something?
मैम हम ऐसा एक रीजन बता सकते हैं कि उसकी अफिनिटी ऑक्सीजन के साथ ज्यादा होती है क्योंकि उसके पास खुद के अभी लंग्स नहीं है और उसको O2 रिक्वायरमेंट कंप्लीट करना है।
उसके पास नहीं, that is the reason why it has to, but that's not the, that is the reason, but that's not the like exact explanation. There is modification in structure which is promoting or helpful for them to do it.
मैम
Yes बेटा।
मैम जब आपने कहा ना कि एक्चुअली द जाइगोट इज एन एक्विटिक ऑर्गेनिज्म,
जाइगोट नहीं मतलब
नहीं एम्ब्रियो, फीटस। मैम हमारे आंख में आपने वो बोन्स एक्सप्लेन करते वक्त नहीं कहा था कि लैक्रिमल आईज में कुछ वेस्टिजियल ऑर्गन है which is evidence के
nictitating membrane, but it's not working because child inside mother's womb is closed, having closed eyes, they don't open it. Aquatic organism बोलना मेरे लिए सही होगा कि नहीं I don't know, but it is living in an aquatic environment. We cannot call it aquatic organism because it's not surviving in that condition without support of his or her mother. And aquatic organisms survive in aquatic condition without help of their parents only. Isn't it? मछली को किसी को हेल्प करने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती है to survive in aquatic environment. They can survive themselves. So I just want to add something over here. You know, we talked about the respiration or breathing rate, and we discussed that it may be 14 to 18. Some reference books are saying it is 12. So it is ranging from 12 to 18. Now, if I compare the rate of breathing of a fetus, they breathe 44 times in a minute. Can you understand? Do you understand the
Yes.
importance? So that's all about transportation. We are done with the transportation. Now I wish to go for the regulation of respiration. If you don't have any doubt, can we move towards that?
Yes, ma'am.
So if I wish to talk about the regulation of respiration, I first wish to mention about the respiratory centers, and respiration is controlled by two factors. One is via nervous system and other one is via chemical system. So we will first talk about the nervous control of respiration. We have respiratory centers present in our body, and three major neurons are responsible to control the respiratory center. One is dorsal respiratory group, which is called inspiratory center. Second one is ventral respiratory group, which is known as expiratory center. And the third one is this pneumotaxic center. So, as I said to you, these two, that is respiratory rhythm center, made up of dorsal and ventral respiratory groups, and pneumotaxic center, both of them are coming under neural control. Okay. So where they are located? If I am saying dorsal, all of us know that dorsal means the frontal part. So dorsal respiratory center is located at the dorsal part of a special part of brain. Which part of brain control respiration? Rate of respiration is controlled
Medulla.
by so it is present at the dorsal part of the medulla. That's why we call it dorsal respiratory group of neuron. Similarly, ventral part of medulla oblongata is having ventral respiratory center. What is this pneumotaxic center? It is located at the dorsal part of the pons varolii, which is also part of hindbrain. So pneumotaxic center is very important because it is actually sending signal to the inspiratory center, that is dorsal, and to expiratory center, to the ventral, so that it can be controlled. See, the way we have to be careful that the rate of respiration should not be too much. We have to be too less. We have to be careful equally that it should not be too much. So the role of pneumotaxic center is to ensure that the what I can say, the respiration should not be too much. Its function is to limit the respiration. So in this diagram, you can clearly see the different parts I mentioned, the inspiratory and expiratory centers. And as I said, it reduces the duration on inspiration. Now, yes, beta?
Ma'am, in this image, what are the signs indicating?
They are indicating about the polarization and depolarization in this nerve.
Okay.
So that's a very good question asked by you, and I appreciate. So after this, we will talk about the chemosensitive area. So why we call it chemosensitive? Because it is sensing the concentration of CO2 and H plus. And its function is only to sense, not control. Whatever message it is getting, it has to send that message to the rhythm center, and rhythm center will control the rate of breathing. Understood? Obviously, we can understand if I am not inspiring and expiring properly, the concentration of carbon dioxide will do what? It will increase. Similarly, if the concentration of carbon dioxide is increasing, H plus ion concentration will also increase. Why? Formation of carbonic acid will be there. Isn't it? So that will be sent as a message to these rhythm centers so that they can actually like what I can say, they can actually work on it. Understood? Guys?
Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to say about a dangerous practice many a times which is practiced by swimmers. What they do, beta, they actually have an habit of they before they go underwater, they ऐसे करके by repeated inhalation they store so much of oxygen inside their lungs. And similarly, by repeated exhalation, they try to remove as much as carbon dioxide present in the lungs. And then they dive in. This practice is very, very dangerous. Why? Because when a person is swimming in the water, the oxygen in his blood will be gradually used up. And the problem is the oxygen is used up, but he will not feel the urge to breathe. Why? Because the carbon dioxide concentration is not formed. Why? See, when I am inhaling oxygen in too high level, and that level is higher than the one by which CO2 is produced in the tissue, I will be having oxygen. So my pneumotaxic center will not sense the absence of oxygen. It will not sense the presence of carbon dioxide. So it will not send the relay centers or these control centers to work. So what will happen? As the blood oxygen level falls, he or she may lose unconscious. And that is really dangerous for that person. And if at that moment that person is not recovered, unconscious matlab what? The water will gush in, and from aerial respiration we will be try to get converted into aquatic organism, which we will not be successful because we don't have gills, and a person can die. Understood? Acha, have you wondered that why pneumotaxic center is like sensing only CO2, not O2? Because increase in CO2 level is more dangerous. Okay, so it has to be thought that way. Acha, have you ever heard about the mouth to mouth method? What is that? Mouth to mouth method. All of us as a common what I can say practice, all of us should know this. Many a times when we talk about it, people laugh, ha 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 ha. This is something very funny they take. But if a person is knowing mouth to mouth system, where if a person is failed to breathe, a person can give the other person air, the person can survive. कई बार हम सब मतलब फैमिली में साथ में बैठ के खाना बैठे हैं खाने, किसी बच्चे के गले में कुछ अटक जाता है and that person chokes. At that time, where to heat, how to heat, so that that thing can be coming out and a person can give mouth to mouth. So that if a person is sinking, after removing water from the lungs by putting appropriate pressure in the chest region, इतने जोर से प्रेशर दिया, वो इंसान वैसे भी अगर थोड़े देर में बचने की चांसेस थी, उसकी रिप केज, ऐसे केसेस होते हैं, पता है, मूवी में देख के पीपल गेट एक्साइटेड, करके प्रेशर इतने देते, रिप केजेस आर ब्रोकन एंड दे पंक्चर्ड द हार्ट, तो बचने की जो चांस थी वो नहीं और पर्सन गुजर गए. अंडरस्टूड? So we should know about these things because none of us are exempted from accidents, and any time we can fall into such kind of situation. Okay, so I just wish to talk quickly about the diseases because it's almost time. One is hypoxia. So hypoxia is what? Guys, have you ever heard, or from name can you guess?
Decrease in oxygen level.
Very good. So when it is possible?
Ma'am, when carbon dioxide will increase as a result.
So you can say that if there is shortage of oxygen in the air. So many a times if a person is novice and traveling to mountain where air level is different, we can have this. You know, if a person is having low hemoglobin level, in that condition also a person can have hypoxia. So all of you should know your hemoglobin level and take precaution. A person can die if hemoglobin level is too low. Okay. So what do we mean by asphyxia? Hypoxia, so we know. Asphyxia is what? Asphyxia means suffocation. If O2 concentration is in blood is decreasing and CO2 concentration is increasing, a person can have paralysis, and a person can have heart attack, a person can have problem, and this finally there will be death, definitely. So before that a person will have suffocation. Suffocation means the person will try to breathe much, but it cannot breathe. That's a very painful person. Any person who is suffering from asthma will know what asphyxia is. You can ask to that person will tell you. Next is cold. You know, so many types of colds are there, isn't it? So if it is infection in the nose, we call it rhinitis. If it is infectious in the sinus region, I taught you about sinus this time, it is called sinusitis. If it is in pharynx, we call it pharyngitis. And if it is in larynx, we call it laryngitis. So I told you about itis means inflammation due to infection, which is often symptomized by rashes, redness, swelling of that area, and then itching or pain. What do we think? Do you think is bronchitis? Now can
inflammation in bronchi.
So if there is inflammation in bronchi, so many a times microbes are present in air and they inside go inside our cell and they affect those cells. Lots of mucus is produced in that cells. Apart from that, if a person is unnecessarily taking so many cigarettes or smoking, or many a times if a person is too much exposed to pollutants, different types of, a person can also have bronchitis in that situation also. There can be bronchial asthma. So it is associated with having a blockage in the bronchus. So what will happen if it is having a pipe through which air has to go in and something is blocking that pipe? What will happen, beta? We will feel
Air
choked,
will
no?
not penetrate.
There will be spasm, and the cause is it may be due to allergy or hypersensitivity. For example, myself, I have a problem with cement. So if it is there, I have problem. And the moment we are allergic and those allergens are going inside our bronchus, the goblet cell present over there will secrete so much mucus that it may clog the bronchi. So why goblet cell is creating a mucus? Does it have a bad impression of killing you? No. It is doing it because it is sensing something foreign is coming inside. I need to trap it, because that is the sole purpose of mucus in our respiratory system. So there are bronchodilators which can what I can say, which can dilate or expand the bronchus so that a person can breathe. And if a person is hypersensitive, then in that case, if the person is doing allergy test and knows that, okay, this is the reason, we can prevent. But it can be done by various prolonged treatment of bronchodilator. What is pneumonia?
Ma'am, a type of infection which causes cough.
So it is associated with infection in lung and alveoli. Okay, reason same. Due to infection, there will be accumulation of mucus in those areas, and you know, if in alveoli mucus is there, then gaseous exchange will not be properly done. So in such cases, proper vaccination and treatment with antibiotics are done to make you get relief from the this pneumonia. What is emphysema?
Ma'am, it is a disorder where alveolar wall are damaged.
So why it occur?
Ma'am, can you repeat what you said just
What
now?
is the
Due to
reason of
smoking.
emphysema and what is the treatment?
मैम रेस्पिरेटरी सरफेस डैमेज हो गया है.
Reason, I am asking the reason.
Ma'am, smoking.
Cigarette smoking.
Let me tell you a news which you can tell to the smokers, you know. Emphysema is irreversible. If in case the walls are damaged and the alveoli is losing elasticity, there is no way you can regain it back. So if you are detecting at the early stage and start taking medicine and all, it cannot be restored, but it can slow down the process. So that is something which is actually do not have any treatment as such. Next is occupational respiratory hazards. You remember I asked about it in some test to you. What do we mean
Yes,
by it? So what is this? Silicosis
ma'am,
and
people work.
silicosis and asbestosis. So people work in asbestos industry, cement industry, they inhale that and it goes inside the lungs, and there will be formation of fibrous connective tissue inside lungs, which is causing inflammation. So we should take protective gears, and workers should know about the risk जो होता ही नहीं है. That's why they keep on ignoring the things, and people offer good salary, they get excited and join. There should be regular checkup, and there should be a gap. They should take some holidays so that even if some part is damaged, that process can be stopped and they can take a break and come back. So that's all about respiratory system. We successfully completed this part. Any questions from your side? If not, then a bye from my side.